morning, everyone. Can you hear me in back there? It is great to start off my day today with my good and longtime friends at the 3rd Middlesex Area Democrats. I want to especially thank Kelly, Durkee, and Tom Larkin, and Janet Byer, I know, who have been very instrumental in putting this amazing breakfast together. How about one more hand for these three? I'd like to also congratulate the awardees who are all here, and I've brought my own citations. It's kind of cool, I think, to get a citation from the sheriff's office. It's a little different, you know. It'll stand out a little bit more on your mantle, perhaps. And I especially want to acknowledge, and I know you're going to be hearing from them, but all the Senate candidates, and I put them in alphabetical order. You can all understand why. Mike Barrett, Alex Buck, Mara Dolan, Joe Goodwin, and Joe Mullen. Listen, you know, this is an important seat to make sure that we hold and we lead in right out of the 3rd Middlesex Area District, right? This Senate district. It's a very important seat. And I just want to say thank you for these 5 great candidates. We have 5 great candidates who are running, who bring their talent, their energy, their passion, their belief in themselves and their belief in the party. And I say thank you for offering yourselves up to make us a better Senate district here and a better party overall. But how about a hand for all of these candidates? Special shout out to a couple of people that are here that actually work for the Middlesex Sheriff's Office. I've got Lieutenant Curtis LeMay right here. You've already heard him mentioned. I've got Mark Lawhorn back there. Thank you, Mark, for coming in from Malden. And many of you know that I've now my own psychiatrist from the 3rd-MAD here. Tom Larkin actually works with our department as well. So. I was appointed by the governor to this position just over a year ago. My first day in office was January 24th. When Sheriff DePaula initially resigned back in November, I had never coveted this position. Now, we all remember Jimmy. He was a great Democrat. He had a lot of energy and enthusiasm. I remember when 3rd-MAD gave him a great award one year. He was our keynote one year after coming back from Hurricane Katrina and during a great service there with the department. And he was larger than life. He was the sheriff, and he was elected since I was elected, and never coveted this position, never thought about this position. This is despite the fact that I probably sent more people to the Cambridge Jail and the House of Corrections as a prosecutor in Middlesex County than you could imagine, right? But I never thought about being the sheriff and watching over them at the time. And when people had first reached out and suggested, hey, would you be interested, when Jimmy first resigned, would you be interested in taking this position by appointment if Jimmy were to resign? My initial reaction was, not really. And shame on me for not understanding what this job does. But one of my watchwords in life is because I've stumbled in my career on occasion. And sometimes stumble successfully. We all stumble. Sometimes we stumble badly, and sometimes we stumble into success. Is that I never say never to anything. And so I began to take a look at this office and what this office did, what the role of the sheriff was. And I'm telling you, within a few weeks of kind of reading up on this, I became totally a passionate self-advocate because I believed that I could do a great job as sheriff. I knew that I wanted to become sheriff. I knew that this is a job I really wanted, right? From coming from never even thinking about it to become so totally impassioned about the importance of the role of sheriff. And this is something I'd like to impart upon you a little bit today, is the role of sheriff and why it's so important. Sometimes people don't think about it, they don't understand it, they don't appreciate this role, and it is crucial into sort of the working and the safety and the regular working of our communities every day. Now, when I first came in, it was a very difficult time for the department. Jimmy had initially resigned, and it was a difficult time, and he suicided, and it was a very difficult time, and the department was going through a great deal of difficulty and challenge. And it was a difficult time to take over. And yet all the groundwork that he had laid has been paying off as I've sort of laid my own imprimatur on it. One of the messages I want people to understand as Democrats when we speak about this is that we should not see public safety and law enforcement as a Republican issue, or Republican issues, right? Now, It may be said, and I love this joke, it's self-deprecating on us, it may be said that Democrats bring books to a knife fight. I love that joke, I'm sorry. But the fact is, we should never cede law enforcement and public safety to the other party, because we are better on these issues than they are. And as I go through this, the question usually asked is, what does a sheriff do? Because people don't understand. Now, in many other parts of the country, the sheriff is the chief law enforcement officer of that county, right? Sort of like the state police. Now here, I may have that ability, that kind of legal authority as the high sheriff of Middlesex County, but it's simply something that I do not, that is not the role here in Massachusetts. Our role is to supplement and support and subordinate those law enforcement authorities, and I can do a great deal of that. I can speak to you at some point about that. But primarily the role is about corrections. These are houses of correction, right? We've got the House of Corrections in Billerica, and then we've got the jail in Cambridge. In Billerica, we've got about 800 men who are sentenced, generally through the district courts, not the superior courts, right? So Waltham District Court, Concord District Court, all the district courts will sentence people to the Billerica House of Corrections. If they're being held on bail or without bail on a big charge, whatever it may be, we hold all those men in Cambridge. Those are the jailmen. They're all not guilty at this point, right? We've got about 400 of them in Cambridge in a facility built, you know, on the top of that high-rise. We're the only tenants in that high-rise still, and a facility built for 160. Right? We've got another 250 spread out throughout the county and throughout the state in other facilities because we don't have enough room for our jailmen, so to speak. That's primarily it. About 650 jailmen and 800 housemen. And then we've got about 100 women, about 40 to 50 of which are being held on bail and 40 or 50 of which are sentenced, and they're all over in Framingham, MCI Framingham, right? We don't have the facilities to be able to take care of them in our own place. We never have. But I'll tell you a little bit about what we're doing for those women, because for the first time in decades, we've been stepping more into the lives of those incarcerated women in Framingham, and I'll tell you a little bit more about them. Now, people know what police do, people know what firefighters do, because they're out on the streets and people understand. And honestly, in the end, I'll tell you a little bit about what our corrections officers do, because people go up and say thank you to police and fire and those types of folks, rightfully so. But people never take the time to say thank you to a corrections officer or sometimes the staff of these institutions. And they do an amazing amount of work that you have probably never heard about. We don't make sentences. We don't make decisions on sentencing. We don't make decisions on reducing sentences. That's not our prerogative. Our role is to prepare our inmates, who are an average stay of about 240 to 260 days, prepare them for reentry. Every one of the men in my custody is coming back out. Every one of them, right? And my job is to prepare them for reentry when they come back out. And so it's a more significant issue here. And how do we do that? When they first come in, we take a risk assessment. We kind of go through this very lengthy interview process. We get to understand what's gone wrong in their lives that has led to their criminality. Now, you probably all know in here, we all know, that 85 to 90% of it, self-reported, is because of drug or alcohol addiction. 85 to 90% of my inmates are drug or alcohol addicted, right? I mean, if you took addiction out of this world, I mean, imagine how few jails you'd really need, right? About 40 to 50% of my men have some type of mental illness. So it's a significant population. The women have a higher rates of mental illness, actually, too, in MCI Framingham. Our job is to take an assessment of what their needs are initially. They also are in there because of other risk factors. Who thinks about housing as a risk factor for criminality? It is. Who thinks about education as a risk factor for criminality? It is. Who thinks about unemployment as being a risk factor, or underemployment as being a risk factor for criminality? It is. These are all risk factors for why people end up in my facility. Now, I will tell you this. I walk through this facility almost every day. I see the men in these facilities, and they are not that much different from me. And they are not much different from anyone here. If you've known anyone, family member, a neighbor, someone that you've known fairly closely that spent time in a house of corrections or a jail, just raise your hand. All right? Look at that. I mean, that's a high number of people here. It affects all of us. It affects all of us. And the people that are, and I walk down these tiers, and I'll hear someone say, "Hey, Peter!" It always stuns me. Instead of, usually when I walk through the tiers, I'm always sheriff, right? "Hey, Peter!" But to this person, I'm not the sheriff. I'm the kid that grew up down the street. I remember Michael, seeing him. His face was the same as it was 20, 25 years ago. Well, actually, probably longer. I'm older. I forget how old I am, actually. 30, 35 years ago. It was the same face, behind bars, saying, "Hey, Peter, how you doing? How's your mom and your dad?" Right? That's startling. And that is not the only time it's happened. It happens over and over and over again. So how do they end up here? Substance abuse, mental health. These are the first things we try to treat when we get them in. Address these issues. We just put in a big contract with AdCare. It cost a few $100,000. We did it through our canteen funds, which are the monies that the inmates, we sort of reap from the inmates spending their monies, and they're only to be used for inmate services. We took them out. The contract had been suspended before I got there because of budget cuts. We put another $300,000 to get in 5 and 6 AdCare representatives up there to do this type of treatment, intensive treatment for our inmates, get them back on track there. But we need to do more, and it's about education and vocation. Now, education is a significant component. We all know if you track education through a person's, through our socio-economic kind of spectrum, the greater the education, the more money you make, the lower the criminality. I mean, it's quite stark, this whole issue of education. Well, we have a better educated, relatively population than most other houses of corrections. About 68% of our inmates have a high school degree or a high school degree equivalent, a GED. 68%, that's pretty high. In other places, it's sometimes 20 and 30% in other places, right? We have an older population, by the way. It's an average age of 35 years old. In other houses of corrections, it's 22 and 24 and 25 years old. So it's an older population as well. So how can I help them if I can get them on that educational track? Just getting a GED alone while you're incarcerated reduces your chance of recidivism or reoffending criminally by 23%. Just a GED alone. This is something we take for granted. Oh, it's a GED, it's no big deal, right? Anyone can do that. Well, that's not necessarily true. We have a very high pass rate in our institution because we focus on this, and we know the difference it makes in their kind of coming on back or not coming on back. Education. We're starting a program with UMass Lowell and also a program with Middlesex Community College. I just met with the president the other day. Because a higher rate of our inmates have their GED or high school degree, I'm trying to see if I can get them in that first rung to a community college degree. Get them to go to college afterwards, right? This is very important to these men and the women as we kind of move this over to the women as well. Because a lot of them just don't think they can do this, and yet they can do it. And a lot of them are actually lost because if you know the community college system, many of them are not prepared really to go to those courses where you get credit. So you've got to do those prep courses. I can't remember what they're called right now. You're nodding a lot. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. But the prep courses to get you to the point where you can take the credit courses. And we lose a lot of these men because they just say, "What am I doing, man? I'm not even getting credit." And after a couple of courses, they say, "Forget it. I'm not even bothering anymore," right? If we can get those prep courses out of the way while they're incarcerated, then when they get out, they can actually go for credit when they get out, and then they can start getting that foot on the first rung and take a step, and they take a step, baby steps every day, right? A better way for them and a better way for their families. We also have great educational, vocational programs. Many of you might know of Jimmy DePaulo's Culinary Arts program. It's a great program that people get a SurSafe certificate, and they get a lot of training and teamwork. We started up 2 new programs just like this, just only 6, 8 months ago. One is a Xerox, first in the nation, by the way, right here in Middlesex County, Xerox Corrections to Career program. First time done in a sheriff's office across this nation, right? Where all the inmates, because the old printing press is dead, dying, it's just people are not getting jobs in this industry anymore. But digital imaging, digital printing, digital scanning is all growing right now, particularly with all the newest technologies. So we started this program with Xerox Corrections to Career, where these inmates will get this training, this very significant curriculum, will be trained in the very latest in all the technologies, even later than those that are in the field right now, in digital imaging, digital printing, digital scanning. They'll get a private certification from a private printing association, and then they'll be helped with a job placement after that. And from what I understand, it's working very well in the job placement aspect. We started a custodial certification program. You know, these are about designing programs that our men can kind of go right into that are good paying and there are job opportunities. Well, we find there was a great need for these types of jobs. It's not plunging a toilet anymore. It's a much more significant profession, particularly when you think about all the chemical mixtures that we're talking about. We certify them as green custodials students, right? So when they go out there, they're able to get a job, and we're working with Durkin Industries right there in Lowell that's now got this curriculum that's like this. It's unbelievable. And they're coming out and they're cleaning our facility. We're actually sending them out to clean other facilities, right? It's unbelievably working well. We did it in Somerville Police Station just recently. And they're coming out with this private certification and significant job placement help there. This is a great opportunity for these men there. We started Venturing Out, a program for starting your own business when you get out. We're partnering with the Veterans Affairs Department. We're working with probation officers. And as I said, in the women, just because I know that there's going to be an issue here in Middlesex County with our women, they all go to Framingham. We haven't even had a part of these women's lives. And some of the benefits that our men get because they're in my facility, the women don't get. So while men, if they were classified properly, may be able to get a bracelet and go out on work release and kind of start to earn some money, which is less expensive for taxpayers, by the way, and to kind of rebuild their entry into the field where they're actually making some money, saving up for their rent, paying their child support, moving on. The women never had this opportunity until this past year. For the first time in 20 years, we've now put out the first woman on a bracelet. We're now we're up to 4, and I think we might even have hit 6, because I know there were 2 other women we were starting to consider. A significant investment in the lives of the women that simply because they were in a different facility than ours, they were our women, they weren't being treated the same, and we changed that. We're actually offering new programs for the women in there too. And I'm just going to kind of wrap up because I know you've got plenty to do, but if you ever came, and Tom, you've been to our graduation ceremonies, right? I'm not wrapping up that quickly, Tom, so don't come to me. But Tom has been to our culinary arts, our culinary arts, our Xerox graduations, our custodial graduations, our GED graduations. We have them in caps and gowns. And you see these men in caps and gowns or their chef's uniforms, and you see them, we bring in their families. And their families are sitting around tables just like yours. And their children, their little children, their older children, their teenage children, their brothers and sisters, their elderly parents are there. And it is one of the most powerful experiences you can imagine because you're in this room where there is hope, there is optimism, there is the best thing that's happened to this family member in decades, and there is pride in themselves and by their families. And I still remember one man and his mom, and she always stood out because she was blind. She had her dog with her each time she came, and I was always introduced to her. I always said hello to her, and I realized I'd now seen her 3 times since I've been sheriff. And why was that? Because her son was in for a long time. She lived in Framingham, and she came to see him get his GED certificate, his culinary arts certificate, and his, I think it was his custodial certification certificate, right? She came to see all 3 of these ceremonies. This woman would visit him on Saturdays. She would actually take the ride, but because the ride is regionalized, I guess, she'd have to take the ride to get to another place, to take the ride to get to another place, to take the ride to the Billerica House of Corrections on Saturdays. And then she'd spend a couple of hours with her son, and then she'd go back, and it would have taken her 6 and 7 hours to visit her son every Saturday. It was so powerful to see her out there every day and beaming with pride. Now, when I say that we should never cede these issues to partisan politics or to Republicans, I mean that. A case in point, Texas. We know how California is running, right? Deficits through the roof. Their 3 strikes law is not working out well, although they don't have the courage to change it. You know, it's all moving in a bad direction, right? It is costing them a fortune. Corrections is breaking their bank, right? Corrections is breaking the Bank of California. And so in Texas, there's a Republican chairman of the Corrections Committee, Jerry Madden, that took a look. And it's the way he saw their sentencing laws and perhaps the minimum mandatories trending, he saw them having to build 5 new prisons. And he decided to look a little deeper into it because he knew that was going to cost tens and tens and tens of billions of dollars to be able to do this. So he took another look about intervention and lower sentences and re-entry and programming, and he decided to go in that direction. And lo and behold, what do you think this red state of Texas found, and this Republican chairman of this corrections committee found? What do you think they found? They found that the way that he was doing it, the new way that he was doing it, not only reduced crime, not only saved money, but it also reduced crime. Right? That's smart on corrections. That's smart. Those are democratic ideologies right there, right? We shouldn't be afraid. If people are putting people in chain gangs and they're wearing pink jumpsuits, which I think is ridiculous and silly, if it happened to work to reduce crime and save money, you have to look at it, right? There's not a scintilla of evidence that that's true, though. These programs do. And one thing that I'd like you to think about is this. When we're talking about these inmates, we're not just talking about that one inmate. This is a theory I've sort of started, I call trickle-down corrections. Because we're not talking, it's kind of, I was describing it, and someone said it's trickle-down corrections. I said, that's brilliant, it's right there, right? Because we're not talking about that one inmate. We're talking about that inmate's immediate family, but we're talking about their children and their grandchildren. And studies have shown over and over and over again that the children of incarcerated parents have greater likelihoods of lower academic achievement, lower educational achievement, greater rates of truancy, greater rates of antisocial behavior, greater rates of teen pregnancies, greater rates of violence, greater rates of incarceration. So when we start talking about being smart on crime and corrections, and we start talking about saving taxpayer dollars that we can use on better programming, we have to be mindful of the fact, if we can turn this one person away from crime for the rest of their lives, it's not just a matter of a great mission that we're doing. It's a smart mission because we are protecting the public because they will not re-victimize another person out there, so there will be no more crimes of victim from that person. We will not be housing them for $45,000 to $50,000 a year that we could use elsewhere. They're actually paying taxes into our system as well, and they're raising their family, being more engaged with their family, and thus our social costs and other correctional costs with the rest of the generations of that person can change drastically. This is what I call being smart on corrections, and that's trickle-down corrections. So now you can get close, Tom, because I'm about to close. So remember, don't cede public safety and law enforcement to another party. Never do that. We have enough information, we have enough leaders to be able to lead us through this time, right? We do. So don't cede it, don't say we can't fight this. Understand that we can. A couple of other things. I know that we're all here to support Elizabeth Warren in her race, and we should do that. Don't forget your local reps. You've got a great Senate race here. Don't forget your local reps. I mean, I think as our own city and town committees, Peter, who's from Waltham, Peter's going to be fine, Peter's going to be okay. Yet Peter needs help, right? So your local reps, please don't forget them. We tend to take them for granted because they're just part of us, they're part of the community. We don't think of them as being a Democrat. We need to be out there for our local reps, not just our senators, not just our U.S. senator. Never forget those people because it's really important that we're supportive of them. I want to read off, I want to close out with two things. One, this is our inaugural year in review. You can get this by calling my office or by going to middlesexsheriff.org. I'm very proud of this document. You will see some amazing things that we're doing here in Middlesex that will open your eyes as to what we can do for you. And trust me, I could go on for 3 straight hours about everything, all the great programming that we have and the innovative stuff we've done. Is that okay, Tom? He's getting closer. Take a look at this document. It is a great document. Order it up, call us up, I will send it to you. Take a look at it online. You will be very impressed with what we do. And I want to read to you a note about my son wrote, and I took a picture of it, about that he wrote for school. Now on the top, and Tom can see this, on the top is a sketching of a bank. It says Bank of America. It's got a person wearing a mask, carrying out bags of money, robbing, with a police car with the lights shining right on that robber, right? And the title of this, he must have done it for school, Why I Want to Be a Sheriff. Very cute. He says, I want to be a sheriff because my dad is a sheriff, and when I have kids, they can be a sheriff. Trickle-down corrections right there, folks. And I can see the prisoners, and I can bring people on tours in the jail, and that's why I want to be sheriff.